All right. So, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. This speaker series is due to our 20th year anniversary. The theme of this school year's anniversary celebration is the power of us, which ultimately means that our success is not just built upon our own shoulders, but upon the shoulders of many. And we're acknowledging those that have made an impact in our lives to make us who we are today. So in order to celebrate, we are doing speakers on the 20th of every month. And this month we are having Chase Byron, an alumni from Lansdowne High School. And then the chief of police will be later on today at 1 p.m. for Virginia Beach. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Chase Byron, our LHS alumni speaker for this morning. Chase, the floor is yours.
Hi. My name is Chase Kellogg Byron. I am a government contracted software engineer, a video game developer, and a board game developer. In other words, I've got a lot of stuff going on. So if you have any questions for me, let me know.
Hey, Chase, it's Mrs. Simonelli. Can you tell them a little bit about like what the Technology Academy and what were some of the best things about high school that carried you through into college? I mean, what were the most important things that you took away that helped you become successful?
Especially when it came to my success, I think it was the mindfulness that I had to learn when I was in high school, right? So the same stuff that affects me on a day-to-day basis today was the same stuff that I had to learn to be, we'll call it successful, but really it's to be okay with myself in high school. So waking up in the mornings, especially when I go to work today, I have to make sure, do I get enough sleep? Do I have the kind of food and the fuel and the energy to get through the day? Am I well hydrated? Right. So this is the same kind of stuff that will be useful to your students on a day-to-day basis. And really going through high school, it was difficult to balance all that stuff. Right. If I had a soda at 4 p.m. at night, well, that gave me a lot of sugar and a lot of caffeine, and that prevented me from getting enough sleep. So while I don't have some grand or broad philosophy that speaks to say my success, because a lot of my success is due to the friends that I had, the family that taught me a bunch of lessons, the professors who cared more than just about my academic success, but like my personal well-being, that's what contributed to who I am today. The big bundle of habits that help me get up in the morning, that help me do the work that I need to do, that help me contribute to the team and the software that I build. So I would say the stuff that I learned in high school was more than just cool, I learned English, or cool, I learned a bit about history, or cool, I learned a bit like mathematics, but really about the processes that the teachers taught me. Like, how do I make an essay is really important to me, because today in software engineering, I think even yesterday, I had to make documentation. A lot of what you learn in high school and in college and in life is that more than just being able to complete an assignment, it's about sussing out exactly what that other person or that other group wants. So in software engineering, this is really important because we need to figure out who is the end user, what work do they do, and how do we build a better tool for them? And I say we because software isn't built by one person. You can be an individual programmer, right? You can make an application work. But to be a good software engineer, you need to work with many different people. You need to work with people who make graphic design effective. You need to work with people who actually do the programming to make it work. You need people who manage timelines and budgets and schedules and documentation. Standards and processes are really important, and that doesn't ever get done by one person. That teamwork and that effort, well, there's a lot of practice of that in high school. There's lots of group projects, and there's lots of, well, frankly, dealing with other people. There's dealing with your professors. There's dealing with your life and your social life and your habits and your personal well-being. And I think that's a lot to handle in high school. And so the best thing that I can say about like what I learned in high school was communicating with professors, finding out what they wanted in their assignments and sussing that out. And then really just tripping over myself constantly, all the time. There's a little technique that we use in software called failing fast, where it's all right if you say fail at something at first, as long as you keep on trying and you make small incremental improvements in your personal habits or in how much water you drink every day, or in how you improve how you like write your 5-paragraph essays, or being all right with yourself if you're not immediately good at something. It was a problem that I really had in high school, where if I wasn't immediately good at something, I completely gave it up. Completely. It's something my partner Fiona and I kind of share. And it took a long time through high school and my associate's degree and my bachelor's degree to really learn to be all right with not being great at everything all the time. And the way that you become good at something is 80% hard work and dedication, aka you just keep on doing it, whether or not you're good. Long answer, but that's the answer to that question.
That was a great answer, and I do have 2 questions from two of my students in the classroom here right now.
Sure.
And the first one is, where did you go to college? And the second one is, what do you wish you had been taught in high school that would have helped you in college and in life?
So, to make everyone else feel a bit more comfortable about life and success and such, I am thoroughly an average student. I was a B student through high school. I basically made it into Tidewater Community College and made it through my associate's degree. And I was very privileged in the fact that I was able to get an associate's degree. And after I got it, associates in computer science, that essentially forced Old Dominion University's hand, and I was accepted into their bachelor's degree program. So even people like me can skate by and get into college and such. So after Old Dominion University, after about 2.5 years of that, I graduated in like mid-2015. And then for 2 years, I worked in the software engineering industry, or really the broader IT industry, and also software engineering. And after about 2.5 years of experiencing software engineering, and I really liked it, I got one of the professors from my bachelor's degree at Old Dominion University and one of my current supervisors, one of my current project managers from the company that I was working for, to write 2 recommendation letters for George Mason's Masters of Software Engineering. And then, and I don't recommend this, I worked full-time and also took 2 master's degree courses for about 5 semesters, or about 2.5 years. And I was very, 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 very tired all the time. But I managed to finish it with a lot of hard work and gumption and mindfulness practices. And that's where I'm at today. So I went to Tidewater Community College, got an associate's degree in computer science, no extras. Went to Old Dominion University for a bachelor's in computer science. And I did not get any minors because that's all I could handle. And then 2.5 years later, with enough money and time, I was able to get into George Mason University's Masters of Software Engineering. And if there's something that I wish was taught to me in high school, to be really, really, really honest, I wish that the mindfulness techniques that I know about today, which were taught to me by my partner, Fiona, were taught to me in high school, which are their techniques, they're effective techniques to learn how to be empathetic and sympathetic towards other people. And that also includes yourself, right? It's really simple stuff. How am I feeling today? Do I need to impress other people? Why do I feel like I need to impress other people? If I'm having a hard time paying attention to this pasty white guy talking about software engineering with all of his legitimate privilege and success, am I tired? Am I thirsty? Am I hungry? What do I need to do to pay attention? What am I what should I actually be pulling from what this guy is listening to? I think a lot of the teachers at Lanestown High School did a very good job with the resources that they had of teaching critical thinking skills. Somewhat counterintuitive to them being professors, being able to question authority effectively, right? Not saying, oh, the people in my life who are authority figures are innately wrong, but are they right? And what are effective ways for me to question them without hurting their pride, without hurting their feelings? That goes for your friends as well as your family, as well as your teachers, the people in your life that just kind of like fell into it. The fact that you didn't choose your parents, you may not have chosen your teachers. And sometimes you may not have chosen your friends, they just kind of fall into your life. how do you talk with and communicate with them in an effective way so you don't hurt their pride, you don't hurt their feelings, but you do get them to be a little bit introspective as to why they are doing what they're doing or why they're teaching in a certain way. And my professors challenged themselves to have their students question them. Like, not just have their students question themselves and why they were doing stuff and being mindful, but to question the professor themselves. My AP English teacher, Fodchek, was great about that. Mrs. Simonelli was great about that. A lot of our teachers don't get the resources that they need to be able to always be able to do this, but teaching critical thinking skills in terms of mindfulness and effective communication was something that I wish more money and effort was put into. But in order for that to happen, we need to have broad education reform so that teachers are paid more, so they get more sources and resources to be able to teach that sort of thing, too. Speaking of hydration.
So I have a question. So talking about our theme for this year and talking about the inspirations that we've had to lead to our successes that we are today, who would you say is your most notable figure in your life that's been that support system for you?
My mom. And it's because more than just like being my mom and being the primary person who raised me for most of my life, she did a really fantastic job of teaching me what constructive criticism looked like. It didn't always feel great, because pretty much anything I did was then responded to with constructive criticism, like, oh, this is fantastic, but maybe you should draw this in a different way, or this is fantastic, but who's going to use this, right? It's not always that I felt judged, but that I had to learn how to take criticism, especially when that person who was giving me criticism was doing it from a place of care and improvement. And what that essentially taught me was that throughout my life, that even people who were yelling, screaming, angry, and mad, even those people could have legitimate concerns. Even people who are not mindful of themselves, may be hypocrites, may not be a great example of what I want to be in my life, they might still have lessons that I could learn. So if there was someone who was acting rowdy and crazy or whatever, I could still learn from them. It's like, oh, here's what they want to achieve with their communication. Here's what they are achieving with their communication, and it's not what they want, right? So if you want to say communicate to an artist friend of yours, that you want them, that you're trying to like suss out like why they drew something or why they drew it in a certain way, learning how to effectively communicate to them what you're saying without like making them feel like emotionally tied to it or that they're being judged. It's particularly difficult, but for yourself as well. When a teacher is giving you criticism, constructive or not, learning how to take that criticism effectively and trying to untangle the emotional mess that everyone in high school is going through, so that you can actually like grab, oh, here's a nugget of improvement that I can actually work on. And my mom really taught me about that. She also, like, my mom really knew that I wanted to get into programming and software engineering, which is why she pushed me into, say, theater classes, so I can speak in full sentences without saying or right? Which isn't a bad thing. It's just a habit you need to get over. My mom pushed me into, while I was going to Tidewater Community College for my associate's degree in computer science, I was also taking I think I took 8 different art classes at the Visual Arts Center, which is a part of TCC. My mom was the one who, I was originally slated to go to Green Run High School, which is not a bad high school, but the Technology Academy honestly matched more of what I needed for my education. So she was the one who advocated for me to get into the Technology Academy, and also advocated for me to get into the Governor's School for the Arts in theater. So in addition to learning how to program and going to AP classes and being called gifted, I was also going to theater classes and taking art classes and every single time that I went to, say, an English class or a history class, and I would be like, why am I taking this class? This has nothing to do with like mathematics or art or computer design. My mom would remind me that when I get into my job, when I get into software engineering or programming, it is 15% what you think it's going to be, and 85% communicating with other people, working with and forming effective documentation, like learning how to find the creativity in whatever you're doing, and like communication. Like honestly, like it is more often that you interact with other people than you do what you think you're going to be doing at your job. 15% of my job is actually writing code. Most of the time I use my special abilities in Google Foo, right, to suss out what I need, what resources I need, what problem I need to handle. I need to be able to effectively communicate with the people that are around me. And all of this stuff my mom told me when I was in high school. And unsurprisingly, I didn't realize it until I was in the working world. When I was working at Best Buy and Geek Squad and retail, and I realized that most of it wasn't selling products, it was selling a vision. It was selling like what that person wanted. Plus, my mom worked in advertising and retail. So in terms of changing people's minds, she was particularly good at it.
Hey, Chase, it's Miss Sinelli again. I have a question, and this is my question, not one of my students' questions, about mindfulness. And the reason I ask is I just on last Friday attended the ODU writing conference. And actually for a writing conference, a lot of it was about mindfulness rather than writing. But anyway, so my question is, do you see that, like, I know that you've recently finished your master's degree. Did you see any of that mindfulness coming out on the college campus? Like you said, you know, that you wish that maybe you had learned more about it in high school, but do you think that college professors are picking up on that and helping students with kind of that mindfulness to know what they need to take care of themselves? Or is it still kind of much more, I don't know what I'm trying to say, because you know, like when you go to college and it's sometimes it's the student's first time on their own and their mom's not getting them up for school anymore, making them breakfast and all of that. And so we do need to figure these things out for ourselves. But is this something that is much more, is it still, what am I trying to say? Not common.
Like do the professors teach you about like the outside soft skills that you actually need to succeed in their classes?
Well, yes. However, I guess I don't necessarily mean do the professors teach you, but can you, do they make room for that? Is there room for that? Or is it still business as usual?
I think some professors are coming around to it. And it's usually, you'll find the ones who are very well spoken, who kind of joke about, say, the career that they're teaching for. Like my software engineering courses, and there's a distinction that has to be made, right? My computer science courses taught me about computers and how to talk to them and how to get them to do what I wanted to do. Whereas software engineering is in the human world, right? How is that useful? And that's where mindfulness really came in. Because mindfulness has to be baked into the software engineering practice. But when we're talking about college, you learn more about yourself and mindfulness from the people who are in the classes rather than the professors, for the most part. And that's because mindfulness is a technique to understand yourself, to get over the struggles that you are having in your life, right? And the best way to understand those is with other people who are struggling through the same thing. So what I think is an effective way to say this is professors can and have the opportunity to, and sometimes do, actually teach mindful practices, but they rarely ever say that it's a mindful practice. They more often put upon you the situation where you and your classmates have to learn mindfulness in order to achieve, like what you need to achieve, right? A big and major tonal shift between, say, high school and college, especially in my associate's degree, was that there was no one telling me that I needed to pass the class or else I wouldn't get to the next grade. That was readily apparent the first time I failed a couple of classes in my associate's degree, because I definitely did. And what I had to learn was, oh, what I need to do, I don't need to like man up and get like really tough on myself and blah, blah, blah. I need to find the people who have already learned these lessons and ask them, how did you deal with differential equations? How did you handle the projects in this one class? Because I felt myself behind all the time. How did you handle this? And honestly, like forming a study group, even if you don't really want to, or being part of a group is a really great way to make progress in a lot of these classes. So I would say more that professors, even nowadays, they provide the environment for which you can meet people who from whom you can effectively learn like the techniques for studying, different techniques for paying attention in class, different techniques for preparing your outside world so that when you get into class, you have enough sleep, you have enough water, you have enough energy, you don't need to use the restroom, you've got the medications you need to pay attention in class, you understand yourself a bit more, and you'll learn from them much more than you'll learn from your professors. But there are professors who are actually being taught mindfulness and are being taught to say the word. Right. What I'm doing right now is I'm planting the seed in all the students' minds who are at LHS, saying like, look up mindfulness techniques and don't trust any one article. Right. Something that definitely Miss Simonelli has probably taught you is the only thing that makes something valid nowadays, that as a theory it makes it valid, is multiple sources that all corroborate to form a better view and a better perspective of that subject, whatever it might be. Legumes, studies of proteins, of debates that you're going through. What makes your argument and what makes something more valid is multiple corroborative sources. So when you're looking up mindfulness and you're looking at mindfulness techniques and you're learning how to question yourself in a non-judgmental way, this is what you're going to be finding. So they provide an environment for which you'll have to use mindfulness in order to succeed, but I don't know if they teach it upright, to be honest. At least they didn't when I was going through college, even in my master's degree.
All right, do any of the other classes have any questions?
Hi, Chase. This is Miss Wong. And the class that I'm here with is our Virginia Teachers for Tomorrow's course, a course for students interested in going to the world of education and becoming teachers. And you bring up some really good points that are actually very relevant to what we've been discussing here in class. And you talk about skills that transcend the curriculum or the content that we might be teaching our students. And you're talking about these soft skills that they need in life, like that communication and that collaboration. Which I think are still skills that our students are developing. Do you have any tips or suggestions for our high school students to kind of mentally prepare or be more open to collaborative work and criticism, as you say, is very helpful in terms of growing as a person? That you might have liked to have seen incorporated into the classroom growing up?
Yes, I've actually got 3 answers for you. The first of which is a really interesting case. My partner, Fiona, they cannot see things in their head. And I promise this is going to be important in a second. They actually can't picture anything, not their mom's face, not a circle, not colors. They don't perceive things in the way that I do. Like I can imagine a 1996 Ferrari. I can imagine myself a good-looking car. I can imagine like a tree that's going on its side. I can actually see it inside my head. Fiona can't. So the first thing that I would highly recommend, especially through mindfulness practices and understanding yourself, is mindfulness is a technique that we can use to trick people into becoming empathetic and sympathetic. So especially as a teacher, though you may not always have literally the money and the resources and the time and the assistance needed to be mindful to yourself, and therefore be empathetic and sympathetic to the students you're teaching, do try and practice it anyways. Because being able to understand and actually stand in the shoes of someone else, like one of the kids that you're teaching, is about validating the experience that they're going through, about understanding that there's kind of a hierarchy of base needs, and it's a little bit different in terms of layers for many people. Like there might be a student who can get almost no sleep at night, but still be able to pay full attention. So if you constantly hammer on the points like, well, you should get more sleep, you should get more sleep, they won't trust you because you're invalidating their experience. But if you say, like, hey, are you tired? Of like, no, I can focus on this one. And you could say, like, oh, hey, are you hungry? Hey, I've got some snacks. Hey, I've got some water. Hey, I've got some Gatorade. Hey, I've got a soda. Let's wake you up, right? Let's get you into the mood to educate. And then you ask them questions about how they're struggling, right? Can they focus on a mathematical equation if they're having a difficult time at home? Can they focus on writing that essay when they don't understand that they should work on the body paragraphs first and then the introduction and the conclusion afterwards? A really good way to practice this, especially if you're in high school, is by tutoring, because it does two things. And this is my second point, which is tutoring is a really great way to teach yourself something, because you're forcing yourself to elevate your understanding of something to the point where you can teach someone else, and it only strengthens it. As a software engineer, heck, working at Best Buy, working at Geek Squad, working at Brookstone as a retail associate, my job was to teach people. It was to know enough about the products that I was selling or the services I was selling, or enough about the computers that I was working on, or know enough about my process or the documentation and the technologies that we were working on that I can teach it to other people. Now, this is just one technique of many, but if you can practice now to be educators by just tutoring your friends in stuff that you know enough about, right? Then you can more effectively practice, well, how not to teach, because you're kind of going to be bad at it at first, right? Because empathy and sympathy and mindfulness are practices, they're habits. You're going to be bad at them at first, but eventually you'll get a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. And so I would say, and this is just my own personal theory, if you want to be good educators, well, first, you got to do that 80% I talked about. There are people who are genuinely already tooled to be good teachers, but any one of you can be a good teacher if you put in the work now to learn the skills of how to be empathetic and sympathetic towards that kid who is too gosh darn tired to learn from you right now, who is so behind in your classes that they're going to be forced onto the next level of, say, mathematics or algebra or calculus or English or literature, and they're really not ready for it. So learning how to understand where they're coming from, that they might feel like they're a failure, that they might feel like they're never going to catch up. And all you have to tell them is, well, not all you have to tell them, but like one of the things you can tell them is, don't compare yourself to other people. You should compare yourself to who you are yesterday. You should use the mindfulness technique, the tool, by saying, progress is not linear. As much as we'd like to say, I'm going to go from not being able to write a paragraph to being able to write a paragraph, like at the most basic elementary English terms, that takes practice. And there are sometimes, after writing 5 or 6 essays, that your progress is actually going to look like this. You're going to write an essay that you're going to fail on, and you might get an essay that you're great on, but that doesn't mean you're always going to write great essays or you're always going to fail. Progress is not linear, especially when it comes to your own mindful practices like cleaning up your room, or making sure that your lesson plan is ready for the next day, or making sure you've got enough caffeine if you're an adult. All that good stuff. So being mindful of yourself and using these tools of mindfulness are a fantastic way to be able to understand the perspective of whoever you're teaching. I hope that answers your question. Is that too abstract?
Hey, Chase, one of my students has a question.
Sure.
She wants to know more about what your study groups looked like in college. And I think kind of like how they functioned, how you got together, where you met, so that she has a better idea of how to maybe get involved in something like that when she gets to college.
So I've had a lot of study groups in my life. And that's because it's kind of weird to say this. I have a lot of study groups in my life because they work for me. And it's really important to understand what that means. I am an extrovert. And on the scale of introversion to extroversion, I'm like here, okay? Which means whenever I'm with other people, I gain energy. Now, why is that important? That means it was easy for me to go into groups and feel confident enough to speak up about the problems that I was having without being judgmental of myself. And that's also like, it played into my mindfulness. So there were some groups that I in that sucked, just were bad. And that's because people did not feel enthused to do their portion of the work. They didn't feel empowered. And there were a number of study groups that I felt like I was like bullying ahead without everyone else. And when people don't, if you don't give people the opportunity to lead within your own group, then they feel that they'll just be pulled along, and then they'll only ever do the amount of work that that they feel will get them the grade that they need to do. There were the best study groups that I was ever in were ones where I and everyone else advocated for different people to take leadership at a certain portion in time. So let's say on Wednesday we would go to a study group, and what we had all agreed upon is that it was my job to kind of learn a lot of what we needed to learn for that Wednesday study group, and I would teach it to everyone else. But I wouldn't do that for the next study group. At the end of the Wednesday study group, I'd be like, okay, who wants to be the advocate for the next one, and who's their backup, right? So let's say Ashley or Mohammed would be the next person who would lead the next study group. They would go and say, study chapter 4, whereas we studied chapter 3 for Wednesday or something, right? And then we'd have like Ashley be the backup, and she'd also study like chapter 4. So when we go to the next Wednesday study group, we'd have like, okay, these two people know it. The other two people, we also studied it, but we expected the other people to really know their stuff, so that if we were confused about a concept, they would be the ones to answer it. So it's kind of like rotating leadership. Those are the ones that work the best. The ones that work not the best are when, especially like I've made this mistake where I steamroll ahead and I just want to be the leader and I just want to like get the stuff done. You do this, you do this, you do this. Those failed. They always failed. And that's because I did not instill in other people the need to be a leader. And what really is a leader is not someone who tells people what to do, but who provides the resources and the morale needed to complete the job. They provide direction, assistance, and resources. And then they pray. And then they pray that everything works out. And that goes into like, progress isn't linear. So there were times that I absolutely failed at being a leader during one of these study groups. Or I absolutely failed to advocate leadership in other people. And what I did was I went to my mom in college and I'm like, what do? I reached out to Fodchuk. I reached out to my previous teachers. I reached out to my karate teacher. And I'm like, how do you guys teach? How do you guys study in groups? Like basic social stuff. Like, this kind of goes to another piece of advice is like, if you don't know something, I wouldn't say don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask. Learn to not be afraid to ask. There are millions more things that you don't know than you do know. So the fact that you don't know anything should not be a point of pride or failure to you, because there's more stuff that you don't know than you do. So do try and be kind to yourself when you're working through these issues, especially when it comes to study groups. And for any of the students who are out there, I also practice traditional and digital art, animation, music production, software project management, drums, guitar, and all this other stuff. So if you even want to ask about artistic stuff, I can answer those questions too. But when it comes to study groups, there's one other personality that doesn't really work well, and it's the individualist. And that's because they only ever want to work on their own. They think that other people drag them down. And for the most part, they're kind of not wrong. And that's because for a small enough project, one person usually is good enough. But for most projects you will ever work on, including self-improvement, including mindfulness, it takes and requires other people. So while it might be kind of difficult to say get into a group in high school to complete a project and have it like be necessary that you must be in a group, there aren't many of those projects in high school that kind of force you into that setting. But I would still recommend, if you can, if you've got enough energy, start practicing communication and like study groups and working together now, because the further you get into college and frankly into life, even if you never go to college, projects only become larger. Projects only become more complicated the later in life you get, whether or not you're going to college or you're working in a career that requires a college education. Like there's a lot of work that requires a group effort. Start practicing that now. And again, progress isn't linear. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to other people. Yep. I will always give long-winded answers. I'm sorry.
All right, so we have about 3 or 4 more minutes, so we probably have time for about one more question. So anybody else have any questions for Chase before we sign out?
I do. I have one more question from a student in my classroom right now. And she wants to know, I guess, how you manage to handle, like as a young adult, like all of the like financial pressures that come with moving, being out on your own and paying for college and stuff like that. And I guess maybe with the mindful practices that go along with that part of life as well.
So this is a twofold answer. What I've heard all of my life, especially when it came to those kinds of financial pressures, is that I think every single time I've had a major financial issue in my life, I've had someone in my life who I was already good friends with, or I already had a good relationship with in my family, that they really helped me through it. That a part of overcoming financial pressures is building a support system of people who frankly will sometimes pay for a lunch for you, who will help you get supplies. And in addition to that, handling financial pressures is about kind of perceiving what's going to be coming up in the future. Like, here's a real simple one. If there is some like big gigantic box of markers you want to get, like Prismacolor markers, boy, those are expensive. Learning to save up a little bit of your allowance each week to go get it really helps. When you're saving up for the next video game you want to get, know when it's coming out and save like 10 to 20 bucks each month before it comes out. Small things like that. But how you learn to handle those financial pressures is by building up the 10 or so little habits, good financial habits that you can, and building up your friends and connections as much as you can right now. Because the truth is that digging yourself out of your own problems is really kind of difficult. You need friends, family, associates, like loans, effective ways to manage your credit card debt. It's not easy. It really, really, really is not easy. And the best thing that you can do is listen to the people that are in that stuff right now. Your teachers deal with credit card debt. Your parents deal with savings and accounts and loans. Your grandfather had to save up for college, or maybe he didn't have to. But anyways, like there are many people nowadays that are going through the same pressures that you think you're going to be going through when you're in college, or when you're working like a part-time job at Best Buy or Brookstone, or when you're slowly but surely getting your associate's degree or move straight into a bachelor's degree. The one thing that I would highly recommend is advocating, especially when it comes to, say, like worker pay, is advocating for workers' rights. Your ability to join a union, your ability to advocate for your teachers and their pay will eventually give you the skills that you need to advocate for yourself when you're a worker in this economy. But beyond those those broad strokes and measures, take advice from the people who are going through the stuff that you think that you're going to go through. All of your teachers have gone through college. All of your teachers currently are most likely underpaid, not have all the resources that they need always to succeed. And yet they still make it on a day-to-day basis. If you want to learn budgeting, learn it from a teacher. Swear to goodness. My mom was a teacher. I have many friends nowadays who are teachers. As much as I would love to say, like, don't live beyond your means, or that tried and true excuse of like, don't get the avocado toast. The truth is that if you want to be mindful enough to manage your personal economics well, you need to be well. You need to understand the way your body is producing chemicals. You need to understand and come to terms with your depression or your anxiety or your ADD or your ADHD or like the other medical conditions that you might have. You need to be able to advocate for yourself and the people who have the same conditions as you. You need to be able to ask those people who are going through the same stuff that you expect or you're going to be going through, because they can give you a bunch of advice. And ask like 5 to 10 people. Like, don't just ask one teacher. They have their own experience. The truth is that as like a straight white male, I have a lot of privilege. I'm very, very blessed. I'm very, very lucky. And by blessed, I don't just mean by the world. I mean that my parents were my parents. My grandparents were my grandparents. They helped put me through a portion of my college, and then I got loans for the rest. So I'm very, very lucky to be in the position that I'm in. But more importantly, I'm lucky to have been my parents' children. And when you don't always have the people in your life who can give you the lessons you need, tell you not just the harsh truths of the world, but also ways to mindfully manage them, you need to go out and find them. And your teachers and your environment and your community and your next door neighbors all also need to try and frankly just force that into your life. That we all need to work together to make sure that we all can be mindful. So build up a community, learn from the people who already know.
Well, Chase, thank you so much. All of your insight today and all of your advice to our students and our staff has been greatly appreciated. We absolutely wish you the best as you continue on with your endeavors, and we just appreciate you taking the time with us today. You are going to be receiving a box of Lansdowne swag in the mail very soon. So yeah, we just got to keep you wearing that black and blue, right?
Absolutely.
So we really appreciate your time, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Absolutely. And if any of you or your students would like to communicate with me, and I'll keep you on the CC of those emails to make sure everything's kosher and okay with you, feel free. The best thing that you can do is reach out to the people who have struggled as well and who have mindful practices. So if any of them would like to speak with me or otherwise under your supervision, please feel free. I have a lot of different experience from a lot of different people, and I am thoroughly average when it comes to grades and stuff. So I learned how to manage and how to eventually have become an A student in my master's degree. It only took me 25 years.
Thank you.
Awesome job. Thank you so much.
Thank you, of course. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Chase, before you go, I just wanted to congratulate you on your engagement to Fiona. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's taken me a lot of mindfulness and therapy to go for that too. So of course, thank you so much.
It was really great to see you.
It was so nice to see you. Hey, everyone, wear your masks and get your vaccine as soon as possible. I've got my first COVID vaccine shot on Saturday.
Awesome. All right. Well, everyone have a great day.
Have a great day. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye. Thank you, Chase.
Bye, thanks.